Revisiting classic games from my childhood is a staple of my adult life. You know, games like Star Fox 64, Ocarina of Time, and Glover. Alright, maybe not Glover. These titles sculpted many a young mind at the time of their release. While they're crucial to my tastes now, you might be surprised when I say there's at least one that I played before them, one that was a little bit different. The Super Nintendo is fast approaching. Shigeru Miyamoto, with his godlike prowess to spot an opportunity, spearheads Nintendo EAD in the development of some fresh titles. Taking members from the R&D branch of the company, Miyamoto and friends completed what are now 3 iconic titles: Super Mario World, F-Zero, and, you guessed it, Pilotwings. And they churned all 3 out in just a 15-month span. Pretty impressive, but it's kind of strange to see Pilotwings amongst such esteemed company. It was a launch window title for both Japan and America, and from a distance looked like an excuse to show off Mode 7. This was Nintendo's way of wowing consumers with its new system, a sort of pseudo 3D graphics that were becoming standard on home consoles. It's similar to what Nintendo did with the N64 with, Pilotwings 64. Now, if you weren't aware from the title, Pilotwings is a flight simulator. The entire game revolves around passing tests to first gain licenses, followed by more challenging missions that put all of your skills to the test. It takes you through several disciplines and succeeds in both being fun and challenging more than 2 decades later. This was in large part to its frequent use of the aforementioned Mode 7. While previous flying games lacked depth perception and speed, Pilotwings attempted to capture the feeling of actually flying. Every discipline sports its own control scheme, distinguishing them and adding to the game's attempt at being realistic. Combine this with the 3D enhancements, and this gives each flight type a unique feel and weight. With skydiving, for example, there's a nice sensation of speed and wind, making changes in direction both difficult to pull off and near impossible to return from if you make a mistake. Rising up on a helicopter at the start of these challenges feels similarly grand, taking you far into the sky until the landing pad is but a speck in the lonely existence that is my life. Later on, you can even participate in helicopter missions where you have to fly into a combat zone and rescue your captive instructors. Anti-aircraft turrets blast away from below, but you get to return fire, making it an exciting sidestep from the other lessons. Completing this mission also opens up more demanding tests, expanding the game further, and I'll always welcome additional content. My personal favorite is the Rocket Belt, which carries an awesome amount of speed and momentum. This makes it a blast to zoom around and fly through the rings, as it has the greatest ratio of speed and control. A switch in camera angle also makes it thrilling when you attempt to nail that tricky landing on a moving platform. This further accentuates a sense of scale as you inch ever closer to either a successful touchdown or a watery demise. Add to that little details made possible from the SNES, like the target rings found in each trial. They spin, rotate, and scale appropriately in each discipline, enhancing the speed and height. All of this gave it an edge upon its release, and to this day it still makes for a fresh experience. P-Wings' gradual rise in difficulty paired with the scores you earn through each run also gives it a wonderful amount of replayability. Since each test allocates scores to multiple categories, it's fun to run back through and see how perfectly you can fly through rings or nail that touchdown on the runway. Alongside tricky bits like landing on moving platforms and skydiving, where the risk could pay off in a huge score. And for all its detailed rendering effects and depth in gameplay, the music in Pilotwings still tickles the old nostalgic ear holes. It was composed by Soyo Oka, who was later responsible for the music in SimCity, Super Mario Kart, and Wario's Woods. Full of bouncy, lighthearted melodies, it puts you right into a happy mindset, and that's exactly how you should feel when you're cruising in the sky. And sure, it'll frustrate you, but with how deliberate the game feels, you'll eventually get a grasp on how it plays and have a blast in the process. But let's be real for a second. The innovations, mechanics, and music aren't all that's important here, because Pilotwings just might be the first game that I ever played. Oh boy, here comes the nostalgia. I remember going to my grandparents' house back when I was just a youngling, running upstairs to where a TV was set up and sitting down to play hours of it with my dad, struggling through the biplane challenges, laughing as we rocketed around the landscape with our trusty jetpack, sighing with frustration at the skydiving and hang gliding tests. And despite some difficulties, the fact that my dad and I still have such a strong reaction and emotional attachment to it speaks more for its impact than any facet of its design. Pilotwings is a solid flight sim with bright colors and engaging gameplay, providing a touch of realism to a medium that was still exploring the limits of what it could do. Turns out Pilotwings sold over 2 million copies by August of 1996, highlighting its influence and enjoyability. This gave rise to a sequel with the most creative name, Pilotwings 64. Oh, some things never change. Led yet again by Shigi-sama, alongside Nintendo EAD, the services of Paradigm Entertainment were enlisted to aid in taking the flight physics to a new level. They'd already worked with several aviation clients, and as a result were an ideal company to help bring Nintendo into the next gen. The game then follows a similar approach, taking you through different disciplines where the rise in difficulty will push you to your limits. With the N64 though, environments are even grander, and the degree of realism was taken even further, with a test island made to look like a miniature version of the United States and a wingsuit mode that allowed for free roaming. 64 had its own quirks and expanded the scope of the series, and like its predecessor, it was a launch title for Nintendo's latest platform. Fast forward 15 years to the release of Pilotwings Resort. Set on the fictional Woohoo Island, the game incorporated a fully fledged free roaming mode where you could use any means of transport. While this mode is a huge plus, on the whole, the game lacks a bit in content despite its pleasant style and controls. And just like its older siblings, it was also a launch window title. You know, I'm starting to realize that the Pilotwings series has always been a guinea pig for Nintendo as they moved on to new hardware and software. While the game's setup lends itself well to advances in technology, it's kind of a shame that it's taken a backseat as a result. The series started out strongly in both critical reception and sales figures, but by the time Resort was released, interest tapered off to the point that it seems the series will be largely forgotten. Despite its slow departure from importance, I've always had a soft spot for the series. They might not be for everyone, but damn if I don't enjoy a good flying challenge or some sightseeing. And with my love for the original intact, I'll always have a soft spot for them.